Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is Ukraine War News Update. First part thereof for the 15th of April 2026. I say first part. I've done a breaking news update on what JD Vance has said about Ukraine, saying that one of his proudest achievements is not allowing any more military aid to go to Ukraine. I mean, wow. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the hits and losses, the facts and figures about what has taken place over the last 24 hours. The stats seem to be fairly consistently high, so there wasn't too much of a dip from the ceasefire. And Ukraine was hit by a large wave of drones and missiles last night from the Russians, and the Ukrainians themselves were pretty busy. We've got some economic discussions at the end of the video. Right before we get into it, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much to those who have already done so. Awesome people. Right, details. So here we have the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. You can find them linked in the description below. We have 1,010 personnel lost, so that's gone up from the 800 and whatever it was yesterday. We had a couple of days where it's marginally lower due to the ceasefire, but I don't think the 32-hour ceasefire over the Orthodox Easter really had any meaningful effect on the frontline activity. There were a couple of days of lower drone usage, but that went back up yesterday, although it's come back down to 1,388. So something funky is going on there. One single tank, one armored combat vehicle. I guess that could be a bit of a lag time from the ceasefire. 50 artillery systems above the daily average, pretty useful number there. 4 multiple launch rocket systems, that's good. And then vehicles and fuel tanks, 253 of these unarmored vehicles and 2 pieces of special equipment. The Russians are losing logistical vehicles, and you could say they are attack vehicles, or at least they get the troops made to be the logistics of attack, one might say. They are losing them hand over fist, these unarmored vehicles, motorbikes, quads, buggies, SUVs, etc., etc. Indeed, actually, no, before we get there, sorry, I thought it was a different video. This is a video of a big exploding tank that we saw yesterday, but the thread is on a slightly different topic. I'm not going to read through it all. Essentially, and we've seen this at different points during the war, actually on both sides as well, Russian tank crews are being sent en masse to their deaths en masse, according to this Chris Owicki thread, in infantry assaults, according to a Russian soldiers' plea for help. With tank use now severely limited due to drone strikes, as you can see here, their crews appear to be surplus to requirements. The Russians are simply not using tanks in any meaningful manner, not in any large-scale manner. And what do you do then with all of these tank crews when you are desperate for boots on the ground, when your recruitment numbers are lower than your attrition numbers? So it is unsurprising that you're seeing these tank crews being co-opted and used as infantry in infantry assaults. Yeah, I think that's a very plausible scenario. Now, Russia continues to create a buffer zone in the area of Sumy that we talked about yesterday briefly. The Russians have attacked across the border, trying to get this buffer zone, and they've got a newly formed area of enemy control and infiltration, according to Deep State map, of about 150 square kilometers. So really have taken a huge swath of the Ukrainian land there. At the same time, Ukraine are trying to counteract the spread of control, but they did retreat to more favorable positions in one of those areas just over the last 36 hours. This is a video I was going to bring into the video I was going to show you because it shows all sorts of unarmored vehicles getting taken out. This is the Signum group, and I presume, therefore, in the Liman direction. I think Scruffy Tales has just done a mapping video to suggest that the Ukrainians have the upper hand in Liman. You can see here we've got a quad, but actually it goes for an armored, some kind of armored up vehicle there. But we have motorbikes, quads, buggies, bukankas, little caches of equipment, dugouts, all sorts getting taken out here in the Liman direction. There's another bukanka going into bukanka heaven, and other pieces of unarmored vehicle you know, the sorts that we so regularly see getting hit, and the numbers are pretty astonishing for losses in that category. Right, okay. Here we have aviation striking a Russian drone-operated deployment site with AASM guided glide bombs. I show you these fairly frequently. It's nothing unusual other than sometimes I'm surprised at the explosive capability of these bombs. They are pretty big bombs. That's taking out 2 bombs to take out a drone operator facility. That shows the importance of these drone crews to bring in aviation. I mean, it's not cheap to bring in aviation. It's risky, and it's those bombs are not cheap either. But my goodness, they do a good job there. So if you do have a drone crew that is causing havoc in the local area, then that's one way of getting rid of them. That is some serious pest control. Right, enemy radar stations. This came out just after my video yesterday, frustratingly. Enemy radar stations and air defense systems were hit. This is 2 nights ago now. But again, I can't believe that there are still Nebo-U radar stations on Crimea. Feodosia, one there was hit. Separately, damage to a Tor M1 anti-aircraft system near the Lozove settlement in Luhansk region was also confirmed. And damage to airspace control system radar station in the Nikolaevka region on area, and the Castor 2E radar station near Lubyannoy Perevoye settlement confirmed in the Belgorod region. Castor 2E is a pretty high value system there. So some good bits of kit, or some valuable pieces of kit, being hit there in a number of different regions by the Ukrainians. Right, now onto so it's a fairly quick first section here. We're now onto the distance strikes, and Russia was busy last night. 327 drones and missiles, although really only 3 missiles is Iskander-M ballistic missiles. Although I think over the last day or so, Kryvyi Rih, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, these places have been hit by missiles in the daytime, so we don't always get a fully accurate picture of the missiles used by the Russians by only looking at the overnight stats. Russia launched 324 drones last night, of which 309 were intercepted. That's really good. I mean, you've got 15 out of 324. Wow. Let's just see what percentage that is. Right, if I 3, 2, 4, that is a 0. That's a 4.6% getting through. So that's a 95.4% interception rate. That's astonishingly good. We quite often see this when the Russians send more drones in, the interception rates appear to be better. Now, that's possibly because they're going for larger cities rather than sending those at the front lines. Sloviansk was hit, but by guided glide bombs rather than these drones. Zelensky has admitted that there's currently such a shortage of Patriot systems. I'd like to see the original wording here, though, because it's a very different thing if you're missing interceptors but have the systems. If you're missing Patriot systems, then that means they're either getting maintained and a few of them need fixing up, or they've been hit by the Russians. And there is every chance that Patriot systems get hit by the Russians. We're not going to be told about it unless it's caught on camera by the Russians, but it could be that missile strikes and drone strikes have taken out Ukrainian Patriot systems. But anyway, Zelensky saying there's currently such a shortage of Patriot systems in Ukraine that it couldn't get any worse. I wonder whether that's actually Patriot interceptors and missiles, but yeah. There was a big deal yesterday with Germany that will see PAC-2 interceptor missiles come through. I don't know whether they are from German stocks or whether there's going to be some licensed manufacturing, or there was talk about buying them from Raytheon, but I don't know. Germany's got, I think, if I remember correctly, Germany's going to fund the acquisition from Raytheon, so I presume they haven't been built yet. They're not in stock, so that's going to take some time. There was also a big deal on Iris-T systems going to Ukraine. A lot more of those. but they really do need those Patriot systems and interceptors at scale. Russia attacked Ukraine with 3 ballistic missiles and 324 drones, as we heard. Air defense is down 309. Right, strikes killed a 74-year-old woman in Zaporizhia, injured civilians in Dnipro and Cherkasy regions. Port infrastructure in Odessa was also hit. There's something on fire somewhere. Looks pretty hellish there. Day of 1,512 Russian attacks yesterday on Ukraine. Russia launched 324 drones and 3 ballistic missiles. Zaporizhia, Russian forces struck a public transport stop. That's where the 74-year-old saleswoman was killed in a kiosk there. The overnight attack on the city also damaged a car park, business premises, and 5 high-rise buildings. So it doesn't look like they're particularly going after military targets there, but it's difficult to know because of air defense, electronic warfare, etc., etc. So, Anton Gerashchenko, 0 days since a previous Russian attack on Ukraine. Cherkasy attack damaged residential buildings, outbuildings, and vehicles there. 4 people injured. Odessa, port infrastructure, no casualties reported. But we do have some images coming from various places where the Russians have struck. Here we have imagery coming from Sumy, where the city of Sumy, where Russia targeted the city's industrial zone. While firefighters were tackling the blaze, the enemy launched a second strike. Same location was attacked again several hours later. No casualties luckily reported, but it looks like a double tack strike. And then in Dnipro overnight, 2 universities were attacked. Ukrainian State University of Science and Technology and Dnipro Polytechnic were hit. Buildings, dormitories, and about 30 nearby residential buildings were damaged. A blast wave blew out more than 1,000 windows. This is what Russia does. I mean, this is their form of liberation, isn't it? This is how we're going to liberate you. We're just going to destroy your civilian educational infrastructure. Yeah. Dnipro was, of course, hit yesterday. I did a breaking news update yesterday because I missed out some strikes on my hits and losses video, and I didn't want to give you a biased appraisal of what is going on. And actually, Russia had been attacking Dnipro and Kryvyi Rih massively yesterday. There were some serious explosions there taking place in the morning. And indeed, 5 people in Dnipro died, 27 were injured. Huge attack there. So actually, Russia has ramped it up over the last 36 hours. Officials in Dnipropetrovsk say the number of injured in that attack reached 27, 5 dead. 4 districts in the region were hit with missiles, drones, and artillery more than 30 times. Dnipro, Kryvyi Rih, and Nikopol were the main areas damaged. You will notice officials in Dnipropetrovsk are still being quite coy about what was hit, saying only the usual infrastructure. You see from the photos in the previous post how careful they are with official photos. And an hour ago, the fire service released only photos like this. So you just don't know what was hit. Could have been something quite significant. Energy infrastructure, I mean, that's what you'd think with the deep black clouds like that. Who knows if they've got Patriot systems around there that have been hit, and you've got Zelensky now saying we've got a crisis of Patriot systems. I don't know, just pure speculation on my part there. Now, Serhiy Ryzhenko, General Director of the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Clinical Hospital, Machnikov, said this of those wounded in that attack yesterday. Quote, the shrapnel pierced the bodies of the people in cars. Bodies with smashed heads, torn stomachs, and sternums were delivered by ambulance all at once. Many broken limbs. All are civilians from 21 to 67 years old. In the eyes of the wounded, shock, trembling, and fear. A 40-year-old man dies in the arms of an anesthesiologist, goodness me, sorry about that, in the intensive care unit. 4 are still in the operating rooms. Many teams of surgeons are operating. 13 are severe and extremely severe. 3 with minor injuries. They were provided with assistance and released for treatment to their place of residence. A total of 16, which were delivered first after the rocket explosion. We treat and pray for their salvation. Just huge numbers of casualties as a result of Russia's predilection for striking civilian areas. The Russian army struck the central part of Slovyansk with FAB 1,500 aerial bombs. The attack resulted in casualties, damaged high-rise buildings, and destroyed a historical monument, because that's what freedom looks like in Russia. Although this is in Ukraine, this is what they're bringing to Ukraine. This is the liberation of Ukraine, right, from those Ukraine Nazis. That's what it looks like. Oh no, it just looks like wanton destruction without a care in the world for human life. Meanwhile, in Kramatorsk, and was this Kramatorsk or Sloviansk? That was Sloviansk, but Kramatorsk is just next door. In Kramatorsk, near Sloviansk, SPU counterintelligence officers detained an FSB informant who was correcting the shelling of the city while working as a school principal. A school principal with no principals. Horrendous. Lock her up. Throw away the key. And this is a moment of a Russian strike on the Pechenihi Dam. I wonder about this. I presume is this a Russian quadcopter? Depends where this dam is, but here, maybe not. Maybe it was, I don't know. That was claimed to be a set of Russian strikes against dam infrastructure here. And my goodness, they are trying to make life very difficult for Ukrainians, aren't they? I'm fairly sure that would be, if that dam broke, that would be a war crime. Right. Okay. Now on to what Ukraine was able to achieve. So even though Russia had a relatively large attack last night, Ukraine seemed to do a really good job of intercepting the drones, and they're not sending that many missiles at the moment, are they, the Russians? Air Force hits Shahed and Gerber drone storage facilities at Donetsk. Now, I can't work out if this is a strike they did some weeks back, and there's now satellite footage that's come out to suggest successful strikes with storm shadows. That's my intuition here. Dnipro Osint saying at least 3 Scalp missiles used, so the French variation. Satellite images of results of the damage to the Bashnef Novel refinery as well on April the 2nd showed that there's damage to the technical overpass near the AVT5 unit being recorded. But okay, is this? I think this might be those buildings that were absolutely shellacked some time back that I reported on. But Tim White says earlier today, Ukraine's general staff released this video of a strike on a Shahed depot near Donetsk airport. French Scout missiles and aerial bombs were used in today's attack. Now, I don't really know. I don't know whether this is an attack that took place yesterday or it was the one that was reported previously where there were claims that missiles were used. They also say they hit 3 ammo depots in occupied parts of Donetsk and Zaporizhia regions. So let's take it at face value that actually Ukraine used 3 Scout missiles to take out a drone storage facility near Donetsk airport, where we already know the Russians have a lot of infrastructure, drone infrastructure. Now, an explosion hit a gunpowder plant. This image doesn't really tell you anything. There are a few sort of videos and images of smoke into this. You can see a tiny bit of smoke there and some fire. An explosion hit a gunpowder plant in Kazan in Russia. The cause and extent of the damage is unclear, but we have heard quite a bit more about this. So monitoring channels report a fire and partial collapse at a gunpowder plant in Kazan in Russia. There may be casualties among the Russians. And then we have some locals. A loud bang occurred in the Kurovsky district of Kazan. The explosion sent a powerful shockwave that was felt by residents of nearby houses. Locals also reported a fire. A fire at a gunpowder factory in Kazan caused a collapse, with injuries reported by the press service of the head of Tatarstan. So this is quite a long way into Russia. Official comment from the authorities regarding the incident at the gunpowder plant, quote, a fire at a gunpowder plant factory, in Kazan resulted in a partial collapse of the structure. Cause is man-made. There are casualties. All services quickly arrived at the scene to eliminate the latest incident. The victims are receiving the necessary medical assistance. Production process has not been stopped. There is no threat to human life or health. So that's what the Russians say there. As we can see again there. I don't know, what else to report of that? I mean, that could be a significant incident. Is it a strike? Probably a strike. We are seeing many chemical plants and explosive plants being targeted. Ukrainian drones struck fuel depots and other logistics sites in Valuki in Belgorod region. Large fire was observed there overnight, so still hurting Russia's ability to store hydrocarbons. We understand that Gornoye in Donetsk, something was on fire there. An attack on a cultural center where Russian personnel were located is the claim. So that's a personnel accumulation point getting hit by something. Then we understand that for the second night in a row, Melitopol was under the Kosh, some kind of explosions there. And then probably the biggest piece of news this morning in terms of Ukrainian strikes, we're going back to Bashkortostan. No, we're in Tatarstan. This is Bashkortostan. A Ukrainian drone strike hit an industrial site in Stolitomak in Bashkortostan, deep inside Russian territory. The attack reportedly targeted the Sintsets Kalchuk plant, a key petrochemical facility, causing a large fire and smoke at the site. So you've got a big petrochemical plant here, looking like it's on fire. I wonder whether the black smoke is because it does do polymerization of rubber or something like that. This plant, it is involved in that kind of process, so it's probably a lot of rubber to burn. Stolitomak in Russia there, looking worse for wear. And you can see here in this image that, yes, it looks very much like a petrochemical plant or refinery of sorts. Stolitomak strike drones continue to fly over the city. Here we have image of an explosion taking place in the vicinity of this house. And then Bashkortostan, which, what one would assume these are the drones going to that facility. Lyuti's dry flying there, although there could be FP1 drones, to be honest. If they don't have landing gear, they're likely FP1 drones. Here we have another one flying over buildings in Bashkortostan. And then more videos of drones flying in the beautiful, sunny Russian morning there, deep rear of Russia under pressure. Okay, Bashkortostan has been hit by a terrorist drone, is a claim from the Russians. A terrorist drone attack. Several drones were shot down over an industrial zone in Stolitomak. Debris fell on the grounds of a company. All emergency services are on the scene, extinguishing the fire. We are finding out the details. How convenient that yet again the Russians managed to shoot everything down. It's just debris falling on exactly the target that they were aiming for. Right, strike on an aircraft fuel production plant in Bashkortostan, according to Drone Bomber. Drones hit the Stolitomak petrochemical plant, SNHP, in the Russian Federation. So there are quite a few different claims about, what might have been here. Here's the Cyber Broshno talking about the Sintsets Kalchuk plant that we mentioned earlier. So I don't know if several places in Bashkortostan have been hit, but burning is taking place at the, I don't know, L4A, L4G sites, which are components of the L or I4 workshop, from which commercial isoprene is obtained before further polymerization and transportation. Isoprene rubbers are the main products of this plant. In 2023 to 2024, the plant underwent modernization. Production reached approximately 90% capacity, which is up to 25% of all isoprene rubbers produced in Russia. So it could be a fairly important plant. It depends, what it's making, what it's getting used for. I don't know if we have enough detail, but anyway, that was targeted, but also possibly a fuel production plant in Bashkortostan too. Samara in Russia is also smoking heavily. Here we can see some large clouds of white smoke coming from something in the background. And NASA firms data has been recording. There have been fires breaking out in the Black Sea, possibly a tanker from the sanctions fleet. So that's interesting. You've got something on fire in the Black Sea there. And then we have a few facilities flaming. First one, fire at Maiska, Zhankoy district of Crimea. Fuel and lubricants warehouse was hit there. That's in the northern area of Crimea. And then fire at Zhankoy as well, the town itself, burning in the area of warehouses and a 330 kilovolt substation. So the Ukrainians hitting Crimea as well. We've got a satellite image of Feodosia, this place that keeps getting absolutely hammered. Another two. It says, you know, the FP2 drones destroyed 2 tanks, but actually they've destroyed a whole host of tanks. All that's left are these sort of 5 in the back here, and even those don't seem to be in perfect nick, one could say. So Feodosia has been absolutely hammered. Now, here we've got some Russians talking about Ust-Luga. Ust-Luga was hit, so the big petrochemicals port was hit with US-made cluster munitions. An American trace has been found in the Ukrainian Armed Forces strikes on Ust-Luga. Ukraine used cluster munitions on long-range drones during strikes on the Leningrad region and Ust-Luga. As it turns out, they were made in the USA. The warhead of the M864 is an American 155mm cluster munition artillery shell. It comes with the Skynode S machine vision system. It was created by the American company Alterion to jam the GPS signal and continue flight. Each M864 projectile weighs 50 kilograms and contains 72 sub munitions, 48 M42 cumulative and 24 M46 cumulative fragmentation. Previously, the Ukrainian armed forces used FP1 and Luti drones with high explosive fragmentation shells. The attack on a port in the Leningrad region marked the first use of American M864s on Ukrainian drones. The attack took place through the airspace of the Baltic states, whose governments have officially opened their skies to airstrikes against Russia. Now, that doesn't appear to be immediately true. That's a big Russian claim that's ongoing at the moment. I don't know that you've got the evidence for that, for the flight parts. As for the American submunitions, I guess we have to wait and see, but it wouldn't surprise me. The GUR has revealed, so military intelligence, that 48 scare quotes medical factories of Russia are working for their war effort under the guise of a medical manufacturer. The Russia holding Schwaber supplies components for missiles and drones. 30 of the holdings, 48 enterprises are still not under the restrictions of any country of the sanctions coalition. Among them, Moscow plant Sapphire produces photodiodes, for ballistic missiles, Iskander-M, and photodetectors for guided missiles of the Krasnopol M2 variety. Those are guided shells, actually. A bit like the Excalibur for the Americans. The Russians have the laser guided Krasnopol M2. Central Design Bureau, the Photon, has produced laser rangefinders and thermal imagers. So there is an investigation into these facilities pretending to be medical facilities, but making stuff for the Russian war effort. Okay, now on to other bits and pieces. We're going to start with Sargan 3000 and other drones performed well during exercises with NATO. So we've already had an embarrassed NATO, as the Ukrainians made short work of doing over a NATO whole massive NATO unit with just 10 drones, something like that. And it was all very embarrassing. And NATO have kind of are having to admit that they're not probably up to scratch at the moment with the latest in modern warfare. Ukrainians are learning an awful lot. And now we have another similar situation. Ukrainian units, quotes, Ukrainian units won all 5 scenarios of attacks on ports and convoys, and the radars and tracking systems did not detect the approach of naval drones, reported Navy spokesperson Platenchuk. So they've done some naval exercises that have resulted in an embarrassment from the NATO forces, and the Ukrainians showing them up again. Now, Zelensky has confirmed that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff will visit Ukraine, but a date has not been set. Now, this is on the back of Zelensky admitting in an interview with Alistair Campbell recently that Steve Witkoff refused to meet Zelensky, yet he's been to Moscow 5 times, but now they are finally going to meet. He stated that Kyiv is ready to receive them any day as dialogue with the US continues. And then we have President Zelensky announcing that the restoration of the Druzhba pipeline is expected to be completed by the end of April, at which point it will resume operations. This is huge. This is going to be directly for Peter Magyar, I would have thought, in Hungary, the new leader who, doesn't want to go full in, all in on supporting Ukraine and the EU. He understands he's got a broad church there of support, but he is still at heart a right winger, but he's not Eurosceptic, so he is pro EU and he is, broadly speaking, pro Ukraine. He said some of the right things, but I think he's not just going to be, taking over the helm and then sailing the good ship Hungary directly for Ukraine. He's not going to be driven by help for Ukraine, but I think he will be making some really important changes to Hungary, allowing in investigators to hold the previous government officials and civil servants to account. That will help to unlock the 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine and the 20th sanctions package. It's going to be super, super important. So Zelensky understands that he needs to keep Peter Magyar on side, and Magyar has admitted that they will not. Russia is part of their energy infrastructure and it's there to stay for some time still. Yes, they will diversify. They will move away from Russian dependency. But for the time being, Russia is part of that mix. And I think Zelensky here is understanding that and saying, okay, we'll get the Druzhba up and running. That will make you look good to some of your supporters, Magyar, and it will make you more likely to support us. So, as much as it will allow Russia to sell some oil, I think there's a sensible calculation that's been done there. Now, talking about selling oil, the US has reinstated sanctions. So this is really good. They've reinstated sanctions on Russian oil after letting a waiver expire. So this is as a result of the Iran war. They then relieved sanctions on Russia. Now they've put them back on, targeting revenues from firms like Rosneft and Lukoil, despite concerns Moscow can still bypass restrictions. So there's probably still a bunch of wriggle room for the Russians, but that is ostensibly good news there. Now, Russia is on track for another windfall, though, from oil taxes, with Urals crude averaging $106.30 a barrel in the first 13 days of April, up 42% from March, when prices rose due to the Middle East. Shocks have pushed Urals prices well above the $59 a barrel projected in Russia's 2026 budget. So, my goodness, almost like 100% up on what they were budgeting for, the Russians. That is not good news for Ukraine. So Russia nearly doubled oil revenues to $19 billion in March, with exports exceeding 7 million barrels per day after a major jump from February, according to an IEA report. So some people are downplaying the amount of money and the amount of benefit that Russia will gain from the oil prices and gas prices being so high. So there is that. But it does look like they, because you got Ukraine having their own kinetic impact on Russian hydrocarbons and their ability to sell this stuff abroad. And you've got all other issues for the Russians, such as massively increased insurance costs and shipping costs and so on and so forth, even the fuel in the ships, right? And some people are saying, well, I think it's a little bit over-egged how much the Russians are going to benefit from this war in Iran. But I don't know. The stats are coming in and they are looking like they're benefiting quite a bit. Now, the question then is, where does that money go? And the answer, I would say, is most probably directly to the war and to nothing else. So even with the windfall from the oil prices, I think Russia is still going to be in trouble economically speaking, in terms of government expenditure right across all the different domains. There was the Moscow Economic Forum, and Russian journalist Dmitry Borisenko, in response to what was said at the forum, quote, "The situation has already reached a point where staying silent no longer makes any sense." If we just, I could read a bunch of this, but basically there's a bit of dooming going on in the Russian economic class. Russia's business elite is abuzz, talking about the moment of honesty by the famous scientist Robert Nigmatulin at the Moscow Economic Forum. Quote, "We've lost everything and are still the poorest. Even the poorest regions of China, their incomes are higher than in our poorest regions." I mean, this is a massive criticism of the Russian economy. Russian business elites are ready for old man Putin to go. Quote, "Any elite, frankly, has a certain limited time in power," says one. Then there comes a purely physiological moment when a decision has to be made about what will happen next. That's Russian economist and industrialist Vladimir Boglev at the Moscow Economic Forum. So good news for Ukraine that the prognosis for the Russian economy is pretty terrible still, even though they are making a whole bunch of money off oil prices spiking. Now, Israel has accepted a Russian vessel with stolen Ukrainian grain, as I discussed yesterday. It's the Abinsk, carrying stolen Ukrainian grain from occupied territories, has been accepted in the Israeli port of Haifa. So they are not helping with, with Russia's ability to make money off the war, whether it's stolen grain or hydrocarbons. Now, Sberbank, the Russian bank, as according to Maria Drutska, has said, quote, "We're facing a severe economic downturn with 10.6 trillion rubles in non-performing loans, equal to a quarter of the entire federal budget and twice Moscow's annual budget. Banks are facing massive risk when defaults happen en masse. The Russian economic collapse," she says, "is here." So watch this space. I think the Russian economy is in all sorts of trouble with some chronic issues, underperforming loans, loan defaults, repos, all sorts going on. And at the same time, they are benefiting from the increased cost of oil, price of oil. I think there's so many structural, just huge problems in the Russian economy that it's going to be hard for them to overcome those issues. Now, I've already done a breaking news update on this, but JD Vance says one of his proudest achievements in government was to stop military assistance going to Ukraine. Like, for some reason, stopping the moral and tangible support for an invaded, oppressed nation is something that makes JD Vance proud. I did my breaking news video on it first thing this morning for me, and I was super angry. I mean, what a horrible, horrible thing to say. Someone getting beaten up on the other side of the street. Yeah, I was helping them, but now one of my proudest moments is stopping helping them, stopping putting any effort into helping them, and actually selling stuff to other people like baseball bats and mace, so that person doesn't get beaten up. But hey, we're not directly helping them ourselves, and that makes me proud. Like, what a horrible man. So I'm going to leave you on something very, very positive. Yay, some positive news, something to warm the cockles of your beleaguered hearts. It's a bit of positive news from the UK. The UK is providing 120,000 drones to Ukraine, according to the BBC. That's a lot of drones. That's a lot of drones. The package will include long-range strike drones, reconnaissance drones, logistics drones, and those with maritime capabilities, with many produced by UK-based companies. Good news. And of course, he's been in Norway and Germany, Zelensky, over the last 24 hours. He's achieved an awful lot in getting support from those nations too. Just before you go, some more info on explosion at the Communard plant in Samara. So we did see an image of some smoke rising from Samara. It's a key facility producing explosives and ammunition. Signs pointing to a propellant blast, so that's good news. Tim White saying there are loads of videos from Stelitmak, which is about 1,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. It's the second largest city in Bashkortostan and very industrialized. Russian authorities are silent so far, but it looks like a petrochemical plant has been hit there. Quickly geolocated to the produces aviation fuel, among other things. It's a third hit here in 5 months. So that's what looks like it was hit there. And yeah, there you go. So just to finally say, you know, that's a lot of drones, 120,000 drones to Ukraine. Let's get in there. That's a lot of drones, which is just an excuse for me to play this from the spoof film was it Kong Pao? That was it, Kong Pao, many years back, which is all entirely dubbed ridiculously. I love it. That's a lot of drones.
I'll take a pound of nuts. That's a lot of nuts! That'll be $4, baby! You want fries with that?
Oh, I love it. That's a lot of nuts. That's a lot of drones. Take care, everybody. Speak to you soon. Please remember atpgeo.com/donate will get you to our fundraiser for Car for Ukraine. Really appreciate those who have helped out there. 6,000. We're over halfway now. Let's keep going. You can get those patches as well. And a big shout out to Jan Sapir, Chris Ahern, Mitch Mazarol, Joe Hales, Jennifer Taylor, and all the others that I mentioned yesterday. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. That's a lot of nuts.